Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Blizzard Watch podcast, where we, the folks at Blizzard Watch, do a podcast where we talk about Blizzard Entertainment and its many games, and occasionally something else, but usually we try to keep it self-contained as much as possible. With me this week, we've already decided that they are my uncanny co-hosts. Liz Harper, I think she can tap into her mutant nature to create giant evil columns like in Ultima 9. I don't know. And Joe Perez, who can hurt his back and has done so.
That's a really lousy superpower.
His power's not great.
It really is. I mean, I'd rather summon ducks.
Yeah. Only if ducks, not geese. You don't want to summon geese. That's if you summon geese, that's like your ultimate. Like ducks. You shouldn't you've summoned a goose and now everything's about to be very bad. He's doing quack sounds. But yeah. A lot going on this week, or stuff that has gone on since our last podcast. Not so much happening after, but there's some stuff. So we're gonna talk about all that stuff now, and then we're gonna see how much of the show that takes up, and then if there's time, we'll do some emails and questions because we got some. But first up, I want to talk about this one first. I think both Liz and Joe will have really good insights on it, and I have a opinion that is not particularly insightful or useful, but I'm going to say it anyway. Today we found out that Overwatch 2 has officially decided not to do the original plan for their PvE content, and that they're not going to do an entire PvP game with character advancement. PvE. Yes.
PvE.
Sorry, if I'm saying PvP, they're not going to do PvP. What? What the heck?
That would be weird.
Yeah, that would be a swerve for you.
That's the whole game.
Yeah. But yeah, then they're not going to do, back at BlizzCon 2019, I remember because I was there, the only one I ever got to go to, they did a big reveal for Overwatch 2, and they talked about how the game was going to be a sequel. It was going to have a whole PvE side. It was going to have character advancement and leveling and everything. And we've now found out that none of that stuff's going to be there. Now, they are still doing story missions like they have done before. They will still be doing those. They've said that one's coming soon. I don't remember if they said it was next season or what.
Season 6. So
okay.
That's 2 seasons away, probably about 3 months.
Yeah. So there will be PvE content of that variety, which they already had in the original Overwatch. But there will not be the character progression and leveling and all that stuff that they talked about that would turn the game into an RPG. If you wanted to play it as an RPG and never engage with the PvP side of it at all, they had said you would be able to do that. Now that is no longer the case. There are going to be co-op missions where you get some story stuff in it. Which, I mean, like I said, I have my opinion, but I'm going to let the people who I think are more eloquent and more intelligent about this go first. I'm going to start with Liz.
I mean, this is the whole reason Overwatch 2 was a sequel. It was going to add this big new game mode, and instead it's purely focused on PvP, which has been the core of Overwatch since it's launched. And I think they're really trying to make a good, fun PvP experience, adding new characters, new maps, and they're working really hard to make this game, but it's this is the game it was originally. This is not really a sequel. The big thing selling the sequel was that you were gonna overhaul this game and have a huge new game mode. And now it's kind of the same game, except now it has a battle pass. Overwatch 2 has a battle pass and it's free technically, and Overwatch 1 wasn't. And that's the primary difference between these two. And it doesn't feel like much. It feels like the main difference between Overwatch 1 and Overwatch 2 was to make it more annoying and more frustrated to play, because now you need to go in and spend all these hours doing the battle pass if you want to earn new heroes, or you have to pay money to earn new heroes, and it's just it's pretty sad. We don't get to have this content that I think a lot of people were really looking forward to getting it on these PvE modes, and it's really disappointing. I was looking forward to this, and now it's yeah.
Joe?
This is not the game we were promised at all. This is not the game that was hyped. This is not the game that was sold to us. Everything about this has shifted, and I understand that does happen from time to time. Game development it's a wild space, right? Things can shift and can go in wild directions. But this is just the biggest letdown in sorry, I shouldn't even say the biggest, the most recent letdown in a series of letdowns revolving around Overwatch. Let's start with the fact that it was billed as a sequel that would be its own game, and Overwatch 1 would exist. Come now, and well, Overwatch 1 is gone. Disappointment number one. So even if you wanted to only play the original Overwatch, you can't anymore because it doesn't exist. We were promised that it would be a whole new system that would be released, that it would be completely updated code and everything else. And while there is definitely some updated code, it was basically built on the bones of the old one, which I understand why. But again, another big disappointment. The Battle Pass and the hero release schedule is another big disappointment. The fact that things were not balanced properly right out of the gate for heroes that have already existed since the launch of the game or for long periods of time, that was a letdown. The fact that there are people that still can't even play the game because of technical difficulties that still remain unresolved as of a week ago. I haven't tried this week, so maybe. That's a letdown. And now this, something that people have been asking for since Overwatch 1 released, is just now gone. It's you know, when's the last time we've gotten shorts? When's the last time we've gotten any sort of comic that was released for it? When has there been any sort of story content that actually has been released for any of this stuff? And
actually, we did get a comic about a month ago.
Okay. So there's something. I'll take that. I'll take that back.
There's a little bit, but not a ton. And we haven't gotten a big cinematic in ages. I loved those huge cinematics. They were so great.
And the universe is cool. Like, I'll just say it, right? Like, they set up a really cool, storyline. They set up a really cool set of characters and countries and cultures and origins and stuff like that, where, like, they had a really cool system that I was looking forward to seeing where the story went. And now we just don't get that. I mean, yeah, I'm still disappointed. It has nothing to do with Overwatch 2, but I'm still disappointed we never got the comic. That would have been a sweet comic. But it's just disappointing, right? Like, and I'm not even mad anymore. I'm just kind of over it. Like, I'm just not even going to try to play it anymore because there's really no reason for me to now. And that's kind of sad. So that's where I have.
Yeah, a lot of what Joe just said and a lot of what Liz just said before him are things I'm thinking. But one of the things I keep thinking about is that burst of talent leaving Overwatch.
Mm-hmm.
We lost Jeff Kaplan. I forget who the new game director was, but why I remember, because he left too. At one point, I think they lost like two people who were directly in charge of the entire process, and then 3 people that had been kind of filling in for them. They're just all gone. And I think that combined with COVID, combined with working out of the office, combined with a lot of things, led to Overwatch at one point. I don't think that the game they were working on in 2019, I don't think we'll ever see any of it. Because I'm positive that they stripped it all, went back to like, okay, what can we get out? What can we do here? And I think the result has been a game that had there never been a 2019 announcement, had there never been it's gonna do this and it's gonna do that.
Yeah.
People would probably be pretty okay with it. I mean, some of the stuff would just, straight up. The idea that you don't just get new heroes just seems foreign to me when it's a game that is heroes are so important to it. Who you get to play as is really important. I'm thinking back to the original Overwatch here.
You do get new heroes, but you either need to play to the end of the battle pass or buy the battle pass.
Yeah, and neither of those is the way it used to be. I mean, like, think about when Brigitte came out. She just came out.
Yeah.
Or Doomfist, any of them. They just happened.
Mm-hmm.
And like, you didn't have to do anything. They were there.
And there are games that have been doing new champion releases and stuff like that for ages that have been doing it effectively and not requiring a battle pass, right? Like, I'm going to throw Riot up here. Riot has been sort of killing it as far as like game development and actually over-delivering, because they're not promising the world and they're giving way more than anticipated in a lot of stuff. But like with League of Legends, you can just play the game and earn like the currency that's existed since the beginning of Dawn with that game and unlock a hero. And they also have a free rotation where it comes in there. They could have done something like that where it didn't require a battle pass. And it didn't require you to like reset every so often to get it, because that's the thing with battle passes, right? It's not a stored currency. A battle pass exists, it runs its course, and then you reset with the next battle pass and you start over from scratch, right? Like it's a weird thing. And I don't know. other game companies are going to seize the advantage on this, I think. And I think we're going to start seeing, well, I guess I'll go back to Riot. Like, we talked about Overwatch and how it would have been perfect for an anime. They did that with Arcane.
Mm-hmm.
Overwatch would have made a fantastic anime.
Amazing.
It would have been phenomenal, especially with the voice acting talent they already had on hand, right?
Mm-hmm.
They could have just said, "Hey, you guys want to do a 6-episode or a 10-episode anime?" And they probably would have gone for it. Throw money at them, we would have eaten it up. And like all of the stuff is just gone. And just other companies are going to step in and pick up that slack. They're gonna seize on what Overwatch 2 didn't deliver on. Yeah. I mean,
be looking out for that Apex Legends PvE mode.
Or Valorant might get one or something. Who knows? Like, everybody's waiting for the next Titanfall, I feel like. Or I shouldn't say everybody. A lot of people are waiting for the next Titanfall, right? So
I know I would like one. But anyway.
Hang on. I want to jump in and switch topics a little bit to... Okay. I'm sorry, this is something that wasn't even on our list to discuss, but the Diablo 4 Battle Pass, which we've heard some new stuff on this past week. And I think the Diablo 4 team has mostly been trying to say, hey guys, we aren't like those other Battle Passes, really. We aren't Diablo Immortal. We are nothing like that. Overwatch 2, we're nothing like that. We're not doing any of that. I feel like they've really gone out of their way to stress over and over and over again that this is not what has become the typical Battle Pass, because it's an advancement system, but it more than a typical Battle Pass, it kind of mirrors the season's journey that we've seen in Diablo 3. It's it's a series of challenges to play through, and you can pay for the premium Battle Pass, and all it gives you is more cosmetics, more ways to look cool, but also, the game itself has lots of amazing cosmetics that you collect by just playing.
There's also I hate to say it like this, like a disparity. Like, I didn't realize this because I knew there was a difference with them, but there's only 27 tiers in the free pass. And then there's 63 more tiers in the premium pass.
Mm-hmm. Which game?
For Diablo 4.
Diablo 4.
Okay. Which
I know that
it's one of those things, I believe, a lot of battle passes have, tiers, and on tier 1 there's a free reward, and tier 5 there's a free reward, and in between those tiers there are paid rewards. I think it's like that. I just
think that's interesting because usually there's not that large of a disparity.
Yeah.
But so that's, I don't know. We'll see how that goes. I'm not against it. I'll say that.
As long as there's no player power involved, I am okay with battle passes, but it's when they either make player power or player option. It's one thing to say, it's cosmetics, because you can choose to look like you want to look like, and if you really want to look, you're not going to get through the battle pass, you can usually pick it up. But when it's another character with their own suite of abilities, imagine if they had the new paladin class available only through the battle pass. It'd be, what? Yeah, that's a game I'm playing right now, and I'm kind of annoyed with it, but I've been playing it because I'm waiting for Diablo 4, and until I get Diablo 4, I can't play anything else. Is I've been playing the Outer Worlds, and there was an update for next gen consoles, which I snagged because, hey, an update for next gen consoles. But then I found out that update that I got for practically nothing, I think it was $8, is actually a $78 purchase if you don't already own all the other stuff for, if you're just trying to,
because you need all the other stuff to add on to it. Yeah.
If you didn't already have all that stuff, then it costs you $80. And I mean, that's $80 Canadian. I'm sure it's less in US dollars, but still it's a fair chunk of change. And one of the things it does is it adds unlimited leveling. So if you want to have no level cap, so you can just get every skill to where you want it, that you have to pay for that. And I'm like, oh, this would have annoyed me. And I think that's something that would really bug me if Diablo 4 had anything like it. If anyone's listening who's into Diablo or working there, please resist the urge to have to go to the game store every day to pick up a sack, or just don't do it. But to get back a little bit to the Overwatch thing, one of the things I was thinking is, one of the reasons that I'm disappointed in this is that I really do like the Overwatch world. I want to see more with it. I want to get more story, yes, absolutely, but not just more story. I want to get more environmental storytelling, and I want to get stuff like logs that you can stop and read. You cannot stop and read stuff in the middle of a 5v5 game, you know? You just can't. If there's like a really cool data log you can click and then read this long thing about, what these researchers were doing at this laboratory, you can't do that while several people are attempting to steal a nuclear bomb from an area and you have to stop them. Like it's not conducive to that kind of environmental storytelling. There's stuff it can do, and that stuff has been pretty cool, but you can't, there's a limit to how much narrative you can exchange in a situation where at any moment someone can come and shoot you. That's why, no one has attempted to like convert the Brothers Karamazov into a paintball game, like there's no live action, War and Peace with actual war, because people are not going to be paying attention anymore. They're just going to be trying to not get shot. And that's my problem with this, is that you can say, oh, we're going to do these story missions, and that's great. I am totally for story missions. But to say it's not that they got rid of all PvE, it's just that they're doing it this way. No, they got rid of single player PvE, which is what we were promised. Now, you can't always get what you're promised. Things change. They've said that. I know full well that they say that every time they do a preview. And I'm not saying they're bad or evil or whatever. Yeah. That's not where I'm going with this. I'm just saying that for me and for people like me, a big motivation to try and get back into Overwatch is now gone. It just is. And that's not their fault. They want to make a game for the people that are currently playing Overwatch. Sometimes that's a good move. Sometimes it's good to focus on the audience you already have. I think in this case, it isn't as good a move. But that's it for me, unless you guys probably have a little bit more. So if either one of you has anything else you want to throw in, do so now so we can then move on to the next bit. Liz?
The other thing about the Diablo 4 Battle Pass is that every season with the Battle Pass will have new game content, new stories, new quest lines, new zones maybe, that will cost nothing. You don't need to advance through the Battle Pass to get them. You don't need to progress through the season's journey to get them. You don't need to pay any money to get them. They're just going to be part of the game. They are going to be there. And that's why I'm feeling good about this one, even though it has a Battle Pass, because they're going to keep adding content.
As long as you can ignore the Battle Pass.
You can just play it. Yeah.
As long as you can ignore the Battle Pass, then I'm okay.
It does feel very ignorable, which is the great thing about it. Even though I love collecting cosmetics and I'm probably going to buy it anyway. Yeah,
probably.
Yeah.
I mean, I probably won't buy the Battle Pass immediately, but I might give in. We'll see. We should talk about some other stuff, though. The first one is that we know that we're recording this on Tuesday, so tomorrow is we're recording it, and 2 days ago, if you're listening to it recorded, there's going to be the BlizzCon announcement. We know from Mike Ybarra that's the plan to mention BlizzCon this Wednesday. I have no idea what they're going to say. I don't know anything about what's going to be revealed. I mean, I will be amazed if they don't reveal a new WoW expansion. I don't think we'll have the new expansion this year, but I definitely think they're going to announce one, because I think they're going to have a new. The next year is the 20th anniversary.
Yeah.
Of World of Warcraft.
Yeah.
And this is the 9th expansion we're on right now. That means if they announce a new expansion for 2024, that expansion will be the 10th expansion on the 20th anniversary. And I cannot see them not going for that. Like, Liz, what do you think?
I also, that's a good one. I think we're going to hear more about patch 10.3, which we've heard this big roadmap for 2023 that goes up to patch 10.2. I think BlizzCon would be a great time to start talking about the final patch of the expansion. Now, it hasn't been confirmed that we're getting a patch 10.3, but I'm feeling pretty good about it that we will get a patch 10.3. And
oh no, you're still on Liz.
Yeah, that's just what I expect. Yes.
Okay, Joe?
I would be surprised if we get a new expansion in 2024. Like, I understand that it's the 20th anniversary and it would be the 10th expansion, but that feels that even though I know they're already working on the next expansion in parallel to working on the current content, it still feels like that would be rushed. And I don't know how I feel about that. Because then that usually go ahead.
I'm just going to say, if they launched it in November of 2024, that's 2 years from when they launched the previous expansion. And that is, generally speaking, how long they do it.
Well, I mean,
so
fair.
It's 2 years. So I get why you're saying that, because it does not feel like patch 10.2 is going to be even close to the end.
Well, so here's also why, right? Because we're still dealing with the new talent system, new classes that have been introduced, a new balance in the way of doing things with set pieces being reintroduced. There's a lot of stuff that's sort of coming back. And also, Dragonflight was released, November 28th, 2022? I think that's correct. So
around that.
So at the end of 22, so it really hasn't been out for 2 years, unless they do another November release in 2024.
Which is what I think they're going to do, because November of 2024 is going to be the exact 20th anniversary. So I think they're going to release it in November. So I think it will be 2 years. Like, it will actually be 2 years between expansions. Like, that's why I think it. That doesn't mean it is what's going to happen. Like, for all I know, they're going to be like, nope, we're going to have you in Dragonflight till 2025. Maybe. Who knows? I don't know.
But I'm trying to think of what other big things they could theoretically announce, right? Like, that is probably the most likely. 10.3 seems the most solid to me. But what if they didn't announce any of those and we get another entry into StarCraft? Not necessarily. Hey, listen, pie in the sky, right?
Okay. I'm listening.
It's because it's an IP that they've done nothing with for so long that it would be absolutely mind-blowing if that's your big announcement, that you have something else related to StarCraft in the works at the next BlizzCon. Because there's still a lot more work to do on World of Warcraft, which is fair, right? I think we can all agree that they're still fine-tuning things. Overwatch is its own current state of whatever. Hearthstone is in a weird space, at least from my outsider perspective. Liz can tell me I'm wrong or not.
Hearthstone, let me just jump in. Hearthstone has a really predictable schedule.
Yeah.
So it's absolutely no surprise if they announce a Hearthstone expansion at BlizzCon. That's just, we have a predictable schedule of expansions, and that's going to be when it's going to happen, if there's a BlizzCon or not. And we know there's going to be a BlizzCon.
Yeah, and then what else? And then there's Diablo, which we already know is happening. Diablo 4 is going to be out in a few weeks at this point, at the time of this recording. They might be announcing what they're going to do for the future of that, and content updates and how things are happening. Sure, or maybe an expansion for Diablo 4, or maybe expansion like content like some of the free MMOs and free ARPGs do out there.
Yeah, I gotta say, it doesn't feel like they're going to be announcing an expansion for Diablo 4 anytime soon, because the way that Liz has already explained how the Diablo 4 Battle Pass and seasons work, it feels like the kind of content you get in an expansion is going to be in those seasons.
Sure,
releases.
But I mean, that doesn't mean that they can't announce that one of those is coming. But I think it's StarCraft has been dormant for so long that would be the mind-blowing thing for me, is if they were to announce something in the StarCraft universe, even if it wasn't an RTS game. But Matt and we talked about this a while ago, and I think Liz, I think this was before you joined the podcast. We talked about RTSs. Mm-hmm. Blizzard was the king of RTSs for a very long time, and now they're not.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
And the genre is not dead. Having another entry come back to it, especially after, the debacle that was Warcraft 3 Reforged, having something that, reclaims that sort of role and says, we still know how to make an RTS, would be absolutely mind-blowing. And I want it so badly. Especially
when you've got studios out there making RTSs with lots of ex-Blizzard RTS designers.
Yeah.
Like the people that designed StarCraft's co-op campaigns. So yeah, that's the best thing about the new StarCrafts was the co-op campaigns, and the people behind that moved on to Frost Giant. So yeah, there's a lot of people out there with a lot of talent, and they're not at Blizzard anymore. So it's I look at Marvel Snap and I say, oh, hey, here's what a bunch of really smart developers, some of them whom were on Hearthstone, get to make a game without Blizzard telling them how to make the game. Mm-hmm. And you get something very different. It's quite possible that admittedly, Frost Giant's new RTS does not necessarily surprise one when you just look at what it is in terms of the story, where it's basically StarCraft if you replaced the Zerg with demons. It's like if Diablo invaded StarCraft. It's very similar to that. But at the same time, we haven't got to play it yet, so who knows? It would be a good move on Blizzard's part to try and get themselves back out there in that. But one of the things I'm thinking about too for BlizzCon, depending on when we get the actual BlizzCon, recently the EU has approved the Microsoft Activision Blizzard King merger thing. They've said, yes, you have to do this. You have to basically agree that you will allow all of your games to be on other streaming services besides your own. So if Microsoft goes for that, and it looks like they're going to, that's one big voice out of the way. I have no idea what's going on with the lawsuit in the United States, which is the other big one that they need to clear. If they clear that one, then the fact that the UK probably won't approve it is not a problem for them. Because let's be upfront, the UK isn't part of the EU anymore. It doesn't really have the pull it used to. So with all that said, if that merger is completely approved by the time of BlizzCon, I know that they will be hyping it because you can't not. You'd have to mention it. But also, one of the things I've wanted to see for a long time, and you thought your thing was pie in the sky, Joe?
Yep.
Okay, I'm about to make you a shepherd's pie in the sky.
Ooh.
Because I have been thinking of this one for a long time. Microsoft owns Bethesda.
Yep.
Bethesda has 2 big IPs right now and a third one that they're putting out this year. Starfield is this year. At this point, it's going to be out this year. They're working on the next Skyrim. Fallout has nothing and will have nothing for at least the next 5 years, at least from Bethesda's point of view. Like, Bethesda simply isn't going to be making a Fallout game. That is a long time to leave a franchise this big fallow, especially after Bethesda bought it and turned it back into something people cared about. But Microsoft and Bethesda have shown that they're willing to let other companies make games. Like when they let Obsidian make a Fallout game, and it was one of the best received Fallout games. However, Obsidian is currently busy with multiple other projects. They're still working on that whole Forsaken game. Is it called Forsaken? I can't remember what it's called. Whatever the new game is that they're working on, that's set in the same universe as their Pillars of Eternity games. They're working on that. They're working on the Outer Worlds 2. They just don't have any people. So what if Blizzard decides to do a Fallout game, or is asked to do a Fallout?
Huh.
Now, I don't think this is actually going to happen, because come on.
Yeah.
This is literally like, if this happens, it's because I got a monkey's paw. But still, it is theoretically possible that this could happen. And here's the thing. Activision owns several games that they've never done anything with. One of those games is Arcanum.
Oh.
Arcanum was produced by Troika, a studio that was founded after the fall of Black Isle in Interplay. And the people at Troika included Tim Kaine,
Yep,
who is currently at Obsidian, and several other people who are at Bethesda and, to a degree, World of Warcraft. Blizzard's got them.
Who is the publisher on Arcanum? Activision.
The publisher, yeah. They own it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if the merger goes through, theoretically, the company that would now own Arcanum's rights also employs the people that made Arcanum.
Yeah.
So we could possibly get another Arcanum game.
Oh, man. Imagine an Arcanum game that's been given the Fallout treatment where you actually, instead of having the isometric like tactics, you actually get the first person.
Well, imagine if it's made by Obsidian, just go play the Outer Worlds and think about if that was a steampunk magic game.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like Shadowrun with top hats.
Yeah.
But at this point, I think we've kind of gone through Liz, you didn't get to do a pie in the sky one. So if you want to do a pie in the sky one, go for it.
I do not have a pie in the sky one, but I do want to clarify before we wrap up this BlizzCon talk that we are not expecting actual BlizzCon style announcements this week.
No.
We are expecting an announcement about BlizzCon itself.
When is it going to be?
Which we know, which we know will be happening this year. And Mike Ibarra said that an announcement on Wednesday is the current plan, so it's possible it won't happen tomorrow, but soon, very soon, we should know about this year's BlizzCon.
Yes, and that's important because it's a sign of them actually trying to get back to normal after everything that's happened. So, but I do want to mention some other stuff. One of them is we kind of haven't really talked about the Aberrus Race to World First because last week it had just started and this week it's over.
Mm-hmm.
Like 1 week, boom, it's done. Liz and Joe probably know more about the Race to World First than I do, but I do know that Liquid won this time. Which Liquid came really close. I think the last couple. They were in the running for the Vault of the Incarnates. And
they're usually kind of second place, and they have grabbed first before, but Echo is really, really tough competition to beat.
Yeah. Absolutely. This time, who was ahead of Liquid when Liquid suddenly just raced in and just took everything, or is it what they were ahead the whole time?
That was Liquid was ahead for most of the race, but as these things go, usually you have these big guilds who are going and they're doing splits and they're putting a lot of work into gearing up. And you have some of the smaller guilds, the guilds that are a little lower on the ranking charts, that can just go in and like rush the first few bosses. So I think the first 4 bosses had been killed before Liquid even stepped into the raid. And then the last bosses they took world first on.
Yeah, but so that's, I mean, what do you guys, we'll start with Liz again, because like I said, Liz covered the last race to world first. She's really knowledgeable in this kind of stuff. So what do you think the highlights of this particular race to world first were?
I mean, it always really comes down to that last boss. And this tier was so short. I mean, so short. We talk about it lasting a week, but most of the guilds spent the first 3 days farming normal and heroic for gear, farming mythic plus for gear. So this was way less than a week. This was like 4 or 5 days before it was done, gone, all of the bosses defeated. So it's a little harder to pinpoint like a favorite moment because it went so fast. You know, you did not have time to watch them spend like 300 pulls on a boss and really refine their strategy. And even the final boss, Sarkareth, that was 120 pulls, which is a lot lower than we've seen on recent in-tier bosses.
I think maybe they took a lesson from the last tier that they didn't need to do as much splitting as before.
You mean like splitting, like doing raid splits, the heroic splits?
Like maybe they didn't do as much as they had previously, or?
No, they still did a whole lot. I mean, it was really excessive on the Sanctum of Domination tier when they would just spend days and days and days killing Anduin over and over. It's like Anduin split number 40, and you're watching the race, and it's like, oh my god. I understand you need to do this to gear up and get your tier sets, but oh my god. I don't have the stamina to watch you. I don't understand how you have the stamina to actually go in and play this single encounter so many times. So I think they really went in and did the same amount of prep work. It's just the raid bosses themselves were kind of just not as challenging for guilds at this level with this much gear. And I really think Blizzard kind of undertuned things. It's like we had Sanctum of Domination a couple tiers ago where it was a 3-week race. It was a 3-week race. And at the end, Liquid actually was like, no, we can't do this anymore. They kind of dropped out. And I think they got 3rd place in the end. Am I right there?
I think that's right.
I think I'm right.
Yeah.
Because they were just like, okay, we can't keep grinding this. They got to a point on the jailer where it's like, and I think anyone who's raided probably knows this feeling where you're making an attempt and you're tired and you've been doing this for so long and just every attempt is like a little worse or at least not any better.
Progression stops because you're just
progression stops because you're exhausted and your mind isn't in the game. And by 3 weeks, that's where the entire guild was. And they weren't making progress and they decided, okay, we're going to stop. We're going to go home. We're going to get a good night's sleep. And then we're going to do this. And of course, that cost them everything. Yeah. They couldn't get world first at that point. But it was probably the right decision. And their guild leader talked about that some. That it's like, okay, we needed to call it because this race was so grueling and so long. And I think Blizzard recognizes that. That's too long. That's too hard. And they've dialed it down the last couple of raid tiers. But this one is like dialed down even more. I think this one was maybe a little too short. So you didn't really... I love watching Race to World First. I didn't watch as much this time because we had a Diablo 4 beta this past weekend.
Yeah, right in the middle of it.
Yeah. But yeah, it was a good race. It was really fun to watch, but it was very short. If you haven't already, if you're interested in this stuff, you should go watch Liquid's kill of Sarkareth because, wow, that was just such a smooth, clean kill. They've done this 120 times, and this last one, it's just everything came together. And it's always really nice to see that moment where it's like, okay, everything lines up, everyone's playing perfectly, and we got this. It's just a perfect kill. It was really nice to watch them finally get to that point.
Joe, you have anything you want to throw in before we move on to something else?
No, Liz pretty much nailed it. I'm in pretty heavy agreement.
All right, then. Then let's talk about Diablo 4 for a bit, because we haven't really... Oh, actually, you know what? We're going to throw something else in there first, because I just saw this, even though I copied-pasted this hours ago. The Wrath Classic PTR for Phase 3, it's patch 3.4.2. The PTR is ending, or has already ended. I think it ends on the 22nd.
Next week. Week.
So... ending the PTR is usually one of the bigger signs that the thing is coming out soon. Like we've noticed when they put out a release candidate, usually they do a couple of release candidates, but once they actually close the PTR, it's like, well, there's nothing to do now but release it. It's very rare that they put the patch back on the PTR. Like I haven't heard of them doing that. Wow.
I don't think they've ever done that.
They did it with Diablo. They've done it with Diablo 3 games. Like specifically the Tempest season got it got a PTR, then it got another PTR. But that doesn't happen very often at all. So now that they've ended the PTR, very likely you'll be seeing Wrath Classics. I think it's Trial of the Crusader, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Trial of the Crusader will be coming to Wrath Classic. And they're going to be adding in new stuff to the Titan dungeons, the Titan Rune dungeons, which is their version of Mythic Plus for Wrath Classic, which I think is pretty neat. So yeah, could be in June. I don't recommend they do it the first week of June. Let me just say that. Yeah, I don't recommend anybody do anything serious in the first week of June, especially between June 1st and June 5th. Yeah, don't do that. But still, pretty cool. Pretty much that's all I have to say on that one, unless Liz or Joe. Joe first. Joe, you got anything to throw in here?
I don't. I know. I usually have stuff to say, but I don't.
Yeah. Well, I figured Liz might, so I figured I picked you first.
I mean, this is one. It's like we knew this was coming. We didn't know exactly when, but we already kind of knew this is happening this summer. And it sounds like it's going to be on the earlier side. It may be an early June release, which is going to be like, okay, I can't do this. I'm playing Diablo. I'm sorry. Yeah. I have to get in my 150 hours of Diablo to get to max level. So I don't think that's a good time for it. But at the same time, Blizzard doesn't always consider its own release schedule of games when it's scheduling releases of games. So sometimes everything happens at once.
And to be fair, not everybody is going to play Diablo 4, although I don't understand how that's possible, but nevertheless, that is the case. But that allows me to move on to my incredibly smooth segue here, where we talk about Diablo 4. First off, the server slam event is over. Mm-hmm. I was there for almost all of it. Quite frankly, I didn't remember that they were ending it on Sunday, so I played straight through, and I was like, yes, my third 20, and no.
It sounds like a lot of people thought it ended on Monday because last beta weekends ended on Monday.
Yeah,
and they just ended it at noon on Sunday, and it's like, wait, I have a whole half day of this weekend, and I can't play Diablo 4. What am I supposed to do?
What am I supposed to do? But yeah, I don't know what exactly to say about it, except that the first thing that comes to mind was that this was one of the smoother server slams I've ever been on. That doesn't mean that the actual launch will be smooth, but I got disconnected maybe once.
Yeah, I think same here. Maybe once.
And for a server slam, that's not too bad. And I mean, I've seen a lot of people on the forum saying stuff like, oh, there was nobody on. I'm like, are you insane? I saw people everywhere I went. So I don't know what's up with that.
Diablo 4 does seem to do a lot of sharding. I don't think they use that terminology. Sharding is kind of a WoW term where you never see a ton of people. There's not like a huge group of 100 people in town. It's always, kind of limited, especially out in the open world. They're kind of trying to preserve this sense of isolation, like Sanctuary isn't crowded with heroes. Bad things are happening and you have to go fix them. So I think they do intentionally do that and kind of keep the player population limited, at least visually, to you.
I did still see like at least 10 people in town. Some of them had straight up their entire character name was in Chinese. So I don't know what was up with that, but that did happen.
Server slam.
Yeah. But what was really interesting to me, not just that the server slam seemed to be relatively, robust. It felt like the servers were holding up. They only let you level to 20 this time.
Yeah.
Which was a little weird. But they did put one of the world bosses up, Ashava.
Ashava the Pestilent.
Yeah, who basically a big pus dragon. I don't know how to say this nice.
I don't know either. Kind of Galacrondy. Did anyone else feel Galacrond when you saw this thing?
I felt Galacronded. I felt like I'd been
Galacronded.
Yeah, it was not. Did you get to play?
No.
Oh, of course not.
Oh, Joe.
Joe, I played a druid for you, man.
You gotta play this game so we can talk about it.
I'm gonna play the game when it releases. I just haven't had there are only so many hours in the day.
Stop eating.
And
that's what I did.
You make time in those hours for Diablo 4. I'm just saying.
But I can glue Koroks to other things.
Yeah, to be fair, Tears of the Kingdom coming out when it did mean that that's a hard choice for some people.
Yeah.
But regardless, I will tell you, man. I've got some ideas for you for druid leveling, so we should talk.
Okay, I'm down.
But one of the things I really actually liked about playing this time was that I got to play a druid up to 20, and that was fun. I didn't get my rogue up very high. My rogue was like level 6 or 7 when everything went down. But my 2 barbarians were both at 20, and my druid was almost at 20. So I was pretty happy with that. Shocked with the 2 barbarians?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's surprising. I'm gonna have 10. You know that, right? It's just gonna be a server full of them. It's just gonna be boop, boop,
okay.
Boop.
If that's what that makes you happy, that's great.
It makes me happy, but it's also how I can write about the class. It's one of the things that I used to do back in the day, way back in the day, like 2007, 2008, was a lot of those warriors were so I could test out a new talent build without having to mess around with my current character.
Yeah.
And I do regret not getting to play a necro or a sorcerer. Although druids are fascinating when like 1 second you're throwing lightning at everybody and the next second you are a bear screaming in their faces. And it's one of the things I'm seeing. I've seen it with rogues, I've seen it with druids, and I've seen it with barbarians, is the smoothness of switching your playstyle. Like one moment you're doing shock strikes, and the next moment you are a bear hitting things repeatedly. The next moment you're a werewolf howling. Then you're back to throwing lightning at people, and it just moves. Like there's never a point where you're like, oh, I have to switch into this stance or I have to take this form. No, you just do. And then when you're done doing the thing, you go out of it. And it's really something I find fascinating. The rogue was, I think, possibly the trickiest of the 3 I played.
I thought rogues were very squishy, but I also thought barbarians were pretty squishy when I was playing one. So
one of the things I noticed when I was doing the barb was that you definitely need to look at the talents and see if you've got a defensive option in there and consider it.
Oh yeah,
like the one that gives you damage reduction, or the one that stuns everything around you. You definitely want to think about these things. I think that's good general advice for Diablo, which is why I put it in my general advice for Diablo post.
One thing you said in that article that I think was super apt is that Diablo 4 is the ARPG of not standing in fire.
Yeah, don't stand in things. If there's something on the ground, get out of it.
Run away. Don't even get out of the way before it goes on the ground. It really is. It focuses a lot on combat mechanics, particularly in big boss fights, but you can see it on like just smaller mobs that you run into. That you can just really be one shot, or you can lose half your health if you stand in something bad, if you don't dodge out of the way. And so there's a little bit more tactical kind of feel to that because you were going in and you really have to think about those defensives. You can't just damage something until it's dead. You have to dodge. You have to use those defensive cooldowns. You have to use the evasion thing and roll out of the way.
Yeah, definitely the evasion thing, which if you've played Diablo 3 on consoles is not entirely new. Or I think Diablo 2 on consoles also has something similar where you can kind of get out of the way. But if you only played Diablo on computers up to this point, evade will be new to you. And basically evade is the button you can hit to move you in the direction you're facing just really quickly. That's what it does. If there's something on the ground that you don't want to be in, use evade. Don't use evade to get you from point A to point B faster while running places. Don't do that, because then you won't have it. And then the big guy is going to be dropping flames and poison everywhere. They've decided to take the arcane. Do you remember arcane from Diablo 3 where it's a purple ball with a laser beam coming out of it and it rotates around? They've made it be lightning. So it's that and lightning at the same time. Is what I like to call just a nice big middle finger from the demons to you, the Diablo 4 player. But yeah, I'm going to shut up so you can talk for a bit, Liz. Just share your impressions before we move on to something else.
Did you get to kill the world boss during?
I got to get killed by the world boss.
Yeah. Okay. So it took me 5 attempts to kill the world boss, and I think it was only going to be available like 7 times during the beta. You got a special cosmetic for killing the world boss. So it's like, this time I'm gonna kill the world boss. I'm gonna do it. And the first time I went in, I was on my barbarian. I got crushed because you can't get out of the way fast enough. And
no,
all of Ashava's abilities one-shot you. It's just like, the only good thing about that is the graveyard is really close by, so you can die and immediately run back. And it's like this, you get the whole Zerg rush thing going on where you're dying and going to the graveyard, and then you go back into the fight and you live for like 2 seconds and you run back from the graveyard. I don't think that's entirely the way it's meant to be done.
No. That's spot on with how Blizzard designs raid bosses for melee. I've played a warrior for many, many years, and that's exactly what it's like to just fly into one of the new world bosses in Dragonflight as a warrior, not in a group. You hit it a couple of times, and then you just hope somebody's using area effect healing that's going to target you, because otherwise you're just dead. So yeah, I wasn't surprised by it. I just ran out of the ability to keep doing it. I was like, oh no, I don't care that much. The cosmetic's not that important to me.
Yeah, it's true. It's like a giant claw. It looks pretty weird. But the thing is, even if you were ranged on that fight, Ashava's abilities go out so far. You have to go farther out than the range of your spells to dodge things. You can't just... It's like there's not quite as much of a melee ranged gap because you're in danger no matter where you are.
Yeah, the only problem is that if you're in melee, then you really have to get out far because you have to clear that whole area and then clear the whole area again. Yeah, it was annoying.
The thing about Ashava, all of the abilities are telegraphed. So you know something's coming so you can dodge out of the way. And Ashava did this kind of sweep with its claws around you, this big circle around. And the thing about that, you could either get out or you could go in, collapse in. Like if you were right underneath Ashava, you didn't get hit by it. So it's like you have that option for melee where you like
I didn't feel like
closer.
That was working right.
It was definitely working. You've got to position yourself right, but you could do that.
It's quite possible I simply didn't stand in the place. I mean, let's not pretend.
Yeah, I had a lot of trouble, which is why it took me 5 times to do it.
I tried it like 3 or 4, and then I was like, I don't care that much.
I spent these 5 times, and by the end, I'd upgraded every piece of my gear. I'd finished the entire Act 1 quest so that I could get the legendaries you get by finishing the quest. Mm-hmm. And I had everything upgraded to 3 stars, everything I had. And I had like respect my talents like 10 times trying to get the perfect build and the defensives and I think the thing that actually was the most important thing out of everything I did was that I had a pair of boots that gave me a second evasion charge, so I could dodge again.
2 evasion charges is huge.
Typically, you have 1 evasion charge, and then there's a cooldown, and that cooldown can be long enough where you will die from the next ability. Ashava also jumped around a lot, so it's like there's nowhere safe in this fight. You were spending so much time dodging. It was really interesting. It's really interesting to see this kind of scale of fight because Ashava itself is so big that like they adjusted the camera. The camera zooms out farther if you go into a world boss fight because these things are so huge, so massive. It's nuts. And it was really fun. Also, I kind of never want to do it again. And also, I know I'm going to do it again.
Yeah, I definitely think that there's a lot of interesting stuff going on in terms of encounter design here. At one point, I described it as being like Dark Souls, but now I'm actually starting to think it is almost like that. It's almost like they're bringing in elements from World of Warcraft because these do feel like raid fights.
Yeah, it does a little bit.
So, but either way, I think that there's a lot. There's a lot. So far, I'm enjoying it. Like every time I've gotten to play it, I thought it was great.
I think it's a super solid game. I can make complaints about class balance. Like I think necromancers are really front-loaded in power, and so as you level, you don't get much of a feeling of advancement because you get so much in those first few levels, and you get less as you go up. Like I said a minute ago, the Barbarian feels really squishy. The Rogue feels a little squishy.
I don't know if can the Rogue do their quest?
Yes.
I didn't get there.
Yes. There's like, there are like several. So backing up a little, each class has a unique feature that is only for that class. It's special stuff. And in the beta, not every class could unlock theirs because some of them required you to go to other zones or to be higher levels. And there was only the single Fractured Peak zone in the beta, and you could only level to 20 this time. So that did lock some people out of their class abilities. Rogue has like 3 levels of their class abilities, and they could unlock the first 2, but the third one, either you couldn't get high enough level or you had to go to another zone. I don't remember which.
Yeah, Barbarian couldn't, because you could get the quest, but you have to leave the Fractured Peaks to actually turn it in.
Yeah, Druid is the same. Druid is the same way. I mean, Barbarian got kind of the first taste of it, but it was like, wow, did it not feel interactive to me? It felt really boring. I hope they get more later because it was like, this has all the excitement of leveling weapon skills in vanilla Warcraft.
Yeah, well, that's the thing is you're leveling your weapon skills, but it doesn't do anything.
It's like it would like give you extra crit and things like that, wouldn't it? It's like, oh, if you're using this weapon, you get more crit, you get more.
I think if you once you get it leveled all the way up, but it's not an easy thing, and it's not intuitive. And plus, the thing is that like Liz was talking, like every class gets special features. On the talent trees, there's 3 tiers that every class has. There's basic, core, and defensive abilities. Once you get to defensive abilities, the next tier of skills is going to be unique to your class, and everything after is. Like this, not that they're not unique before that. Like your basic abilities on a druid are different than your basic abilities on any other class, but it's just
kind of like
there's a pattern to the basic, core, and defensive where basic is your getter, it's your resource generation,
the builder,
and then core are your spenders. Like what do you do with that resource? That's what core is for. And then defensive is defensive, and sometimes defensive is different depending on like what they want it to be. Like leap is considered defensive because you can jump away from things. And that's, if you're taking a lot of damage, jumping away is a pretty good move. But there's like, and each of these abilities has like, there's like a talent. You can spend points to get the talent up to its maximum, but then there's also modifiers you can apply. There's like one modifier that's the modifier for this talent. You just get it. If you spend the point, you just get this modifier. But then there's 2 that branch off from it, and you can pick one of them. And one of those 2 will be sometimes more offensively minded versus more defensively minded, and you can get some interesting synergies. Like there's one ability that druids have where they can either choose to turn into a werebear and scream really loud and debuff everyone around them, or they can turn into a werewolf and howl really loud and get a self-heal. But the top level of the self-heal, they can choose to make the self-heal also put a bleed on their enemies, which means you're doing damage as you're healing yourself. Or you can take the bear one, and one of the 2 top things on it is provides you with a self-heal while you're using it. So there's different ways you can do it. You could theoretically buy all the core abilities or all the basic abilities, but you'd be spending a lot. You could be spending a lot of talent points that you're not going to have to go further down the tree, and you want stuff further down the tree.
Yeah, really the ideals seem to be, okay, you pick up a builder, you pick up a spender, you modify them how you want, you pick a defensive. Maybe you pick 2 defensives because some of them are really good cooldowns. Like I was mostly playing Sorcerer this past weekend, and it's like one of their defensive abilities is teleport. It's like, okay, I'm going to defend myself by getting out of the way. I'm going to move way over there. But then you could also get like ice armor, which is like, okay, I'm going to defend myself by putting a shield on myself. And also when I do this, I can regenerate mana while I'm in the shield. And so you've got a lot of options. It feels like there's a ton of space for customization, though on some classes I felt like it was a little limited, particularly playing the Necromancer. You get to this tier that's just curses, and there were 2 curses. That was it. There were 2. You choose one or the other. And it felt really like neither of them felt impactful when you cast them, and just didn't feel like a good tier.
Necro, I do definitely think that Necro feels a little front-loaded. I don't know that at this point, with the game less than a month away, that they're going to be able to do anything about that. But Necro definitely feels front loaded. And one of the things too is that you really do need to explore the map in order to get the extra talent points that you get for completing. Like, you finish this part of the zone, you finish this part of the zone. The extra talent points are really big, and you need to get them.
Each zone has its own renown, which World of Warcraft players will know what that word means and possibly be frightened by it. And basically, it's just reputation in a zone. Don't be afraid. It's not that bad. It's really not that bad. It's not a grind. So you'll do things like exploring the map and completing quests. Like, basically, anything you do in this zone will count towards your renown in that zone.
Yeah, you do the quest that is the central quest of the area, that'll get you some. You do the side quests, that'll get you some. You take that woman out into the woods and find her chained up bloody husband, and then leave her alone with him to go kill a demon, and then come back and she's acting weird and tells you to rip a dagger out of his chest for your reward. That's totally normal, by the way. Don't anybody be freaked out about this. Yeah, that's some renown. Quite frankly, that should be some renown and maybe some looks. Quite frankly.
So it's like you get it while you go, and they unlock certain buffs. Like, they might give you golds, they might give you, they have all sorts of little rewards. And one of those rewards for some of the renown tiers is talent points. And those talent points are unlocked on every character on your account. So if you play this and unlock it, when you go on your next character, it's like, oh yeah, those renown rewards are unlocked, and I have these extra talent points right from the beginning.
Yep.
So yeah, even those, you could only collect the first 2 in Fractured Peaks because what you could play in the beta.
Yep.
But that felt like it made a really big difference, having just 2 extra talent points.
2 extra talent points is enormous because it's the difference between I want to pick up that a modifier ability, but because some modifier abilities are just there. They're not tied to anything. They're just put a point in this, and now you do more bleed damage. Okay, well, now I can do that. Click. Thank you, more bleed damage. But we've now taken up pretty much the whole show. Which is fine. I feel bad that Joe didn't get to talk much.
No. I'm still sitting here nursing his shoulder. This is fine.
But regardless, I think we should also mention really fast, you can delete the beta, the Serviceland beta. You can delete it because it's its own application. It's its own program. And the actual Diablo 4 live game is going to be a different one. It's going to be a different build. So you don't have to worry. You don't have to keep this. You can delete it right now. And then when Diablo 4 comes out, you can download that at your leisure.
Yeah. It's like 80 gigs on next gen consoles or on your PC if you download high res texture. So that's a lot of gigabytes.
Yes.
And you're going to have to do it again when the release build appears. So you may just want to delete that now.
Yeah, it is not going to be necessary. You can get rid of that. I will, however, point out that somebody has already soloed a Java. Somebody soloed a Java on the D4 beta. So kudos to you, stubborn little fool. Wow.
I could barely do that with a group, and I still died like 20 times. So
yeah, that is kind of amazing. Seriously, dude, congrats. That's wild. But okay, at this point, I'm gonna nudge Joe.
Blizzard Watch is made possible due to the generous contributions at patreon.com/BlizzardWatch. Your continued support means that this podcast site and community is able to thrive and grow. Blizzard Watch supporters enjoy exclusive benefits like early access to the podcast, better chance at having your question answered on our podcast or the queue, and an ads-free site experience.
Thank you very much, Joe. Thank you to Liz for not only writing all the stuff that we talk about in these emails, because it's a lot of stuff to collate, and sometimes I miss things. So she generally steps up and catches everything for us. So thank you for that.
I also already do that for editorial reasons. So I figured, hey, I do this. I can just share it.
And it's quite helpful. And thank you to me for showing up, I guess. And also I was here. Also me. But yeah, regardless, thank you guys so much for listening. This has been the Blizzard Watch podcast, and we'll be back next week. Oh, wait. I'm sorry. I messed up. If you've got a question for the show, I know we didn't answer any this week, but hey, there was a lot of stuff. If you've got a question for the show, you can go to our Discord, and we have 2 channels. We've got the Patron Q&A questions channel, which is great. Please, if you're a patron, absolutely jump in there and ask some questions. We love getting them. If you're not a patron, but you still want to use Discord, we also have the Q and podcast questions channel for non-patrons, which, we still love your support. We just, the patrons get first crack because they're actually paying for us to have the site. So, that's the thing.
We crave validation.
Yes. Also, you can email us. You can email us at podcast@blizzardwatch.com. We got a long email this time, which I feel really bad we didn't get to answer, but we'll roll them forward, and hopefully we'll get to answer this one. It was actually much longer than this, but you gave me permission to cut stuff, so I did. But yeah, thank you to everybody who asks us anything or otherwise interacts, because that's gold. We love that. And yeah, like I said, this has been the Blizzard Watch podcast, and we'll be back next week.